Hello. Hello, it's Helen Disler from Farming Secrets here.
Hello, and I'm Hugo Disler from Farming Secrets.
And it's really great to see everyone here today. And it's all about biodynamic compost, featuring filming we did with Hamish Mackay. So we're going to start sharing our screen and we'll go across and start right away. Okay. So do you want to say something before we start, Hugo?
Oh, yes. Biodynamics is quite important. It's a way that farmers can reduce their costs of producing product, as well as producing a product that is exceptionally good. And biodynamics is the marriage between cosmic energies and earthly energies, and it can be a little bit strange to understand that. So the easiest way to understand that is appreciating photosynthesis, and that's where a plant takes cosmic energy, sunlight and atmospheric gases and whatever, subatomic particles, etc., into the plant, and it exudes that energy through the photosynthesis factory of the plant out into the soil through the hair roots, and that's called an exudate. It actually exudes a message to the microbes, and then the microbes and all the earthly bugs, call them what you like, produce, and including fungi, produce exactly what the plant wants. So that's the marriage between cosmic energies and the earthly energies. And biodynamics is just that, is farming with that knowledge.
So what is biodynamics? Biodynamics is a holistic, ecological and ethical approach to farming, gardening, food and nutrition. It is rooted in the work of philosopher and scientist Dr. Rudolf Steiner, whose 1924 lectures to farmers, the farmers had come to him because their agriculture, their farming just wasn't proceeding the way they wanted to. So these farmers opened up a new way to integrate scientific understanding with the recognition of spirit in nature. Biodynamics has continued to develop and evolve since the 1920s through the collaboration of many farmers and researchers. Around the world, biodynamics is alive in thousands of thriving gardens, farms, vineyards, ranches, and orchards. The principles and practices of biodynamics can be applied anywhere food is grown, with thoughtful adaptation to scale, landscape, and climate and culture.
I like to start with what I call the science question, because there are a lot of people that consider biodynamics as being of questionable science, and a lot of sort of I like to start with what I call the science question, because there are a lot of people that consider biodynamics as being of questionable science, and a lot of sort of voodoo. And it's not really like that. It is highly scientific, but I just like to introduce the scientific context, if you like. Now, in my school experience, the whole scientific paradigm under which I was educated is what I characterize as the Newtonian scientific paradigm. Isaac Newton in the 1600s, in a way, the father of natural science. The important point here is that stream of science says you can't trust this. Yeah, we all have one of these and you can't trust it. You've got to objectify things, weigh it, measure it, pull it apart to understand it. Yeah, and that was the whole scientific paradigm under which I was educated.
And on to the next little clip. This is actually on YouTube if you want to go back to hear these.
I like to start with what I call the science question.
Oops.
I like to start with what I call the.
See, what's that first one? We must have skipped one.
I think this is right because
I only, well after I left school, I came across another scientific paradigm that was developed 100 years or so later by Johann von Goethe. And the characteristic of this stream of science says that this, that we all have one of, is your principal instrument of science. And the whole point of education is to be able to calibrate it so you can actually trust it and use it quite objectively. And wine tasting is a good example. All wines are judged on taste, which some people would call subjective. But having spent some of my youth in vineyards in Germany, we took wine tasting very seriously. From my German friends. Yeah. So I'm no great foodie, but you can learn to taste wine. Yeah. You can train this instrument to be quite specific. Yeah. And also, just as an aside, I was taught Newton's theory of light when I was at school. 100 years later, Goethe was given a prism like we were at school. He looked through it and said Newton's wrong. And he spent 30 years developing a theory of light and colour, which is still not taught in the school to my knowledge. But that's the science that's driving all the leading optic fibre technology and the next generation of computers. But they're still not teaching it in school.
And the last little clip.
So again, the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, Rudolf Steiner came along, and he did his PhD in this stream of science. He was fully up to speed with all the leading modern scientific data and education and learning out of this stream. He then took that methodology, that scientific methodology, and applied it to Goethe's work. And he did his PhD on Goethe's work. And he then developed what he called spiritual science. And that is using this methodology in this realm of work. In other words, applying this methodology to the science of thinking. And he called it spiritual science. And the important thing in the work that we're presenting is to be aware that there are two different ways of looking at the world. And if you're talking to people that are coming out of this stream, you talk in their language. Yeah. If you're talking to people in this stream, you can talk their language. Yeah. They're two different things. It's like you don't go to Germany and speak French. It's just not practical. Yeah. There's nothing about right or wrong. It's just a waste of energy. Yeah. So this is where we stand in biodynamics. Totally works with this stream, but we do it hopefully developing the individual capacities of the farmer and gardener so they're much more empowered. The more they do, the more they are empowered to go forward out of their own sense of what's happening.
So, Hugo, I see you taking a couple of notes. Is there something you want to say about Hamish's message?
Yes, very much so. The interesting thing about Goethe was that Steiner ended up writing a book about Goethe. Goethe didn't write a book, but Goethe's wrote papers. So what was clear about Goethe was he studied plants, and he studied them over many, many years. He worked with 6 or so universities in the northern part of Italy. And when in the process of studying plants, he worked out it wasn't a case of survival of the fittest at all. He'd look at plants as to why they grew the way they did grow. And it wasn't to attract bees or any other physical thing. It was actually the cosmic influence that had the plants grow the way they grew. And when Steiner, and this is where Steiner married this knowledge that the cosmic influence has a lot to do with quite a few of the plants, or all the plants that grow in the world. And so his biodynamics was Steiner's way of introducing various plants that had cosmic influences for a particular purpose, as biodynamics use in their preparations.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? We'll go on.
Yeah. Oh, yes, please.
So this whole series coming through now is probably what you come for, is to see how static compost pile is built in the biodynamic system. So Hamish will go through it with selected highlights. It's an overview.
We're going to do what we call a layer compost. You put a layer of, I call it brown green. You've got brown is carbohydrate, green is protein. The protein can be green grass, green stuff. It can be manure, chip manure, cow manure, whatever manure. Brown is old straw, wood chip, anything that's sort of just dead. So you do these on layers. You make sure that moisture content is right. With moisture content, you try and get that right in the 48 hours leading up to making the compost heap. If you've got straw that's dry now and you start to make a compost heap, it'll still be dry when you finish the heap. Yeah, you want to wet it so the fibres of the straw are the same moisture content it was when it was growing. Yeah, embedded into it, not just wet on the surface. Yeah. So if you've got everything right, you just throw it all together in layers. Anything you want to add by mineral supplement or whatever, you can add in there too. A bag of phosphate, rock phosphate in a compost heap is worth putting 20 out over the land. In other words, you put it through a live process, a living process, and it potentizes, so you don't need so much. Yeah. So if you need to add anything in the mineral world because you've got a deficiency, put it through the compost heap in about 1/20th of what anyone recommends you to put out over the land. Yeah. Bring it through the digestive process of the compost heap. Okay. So okay. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, if we can get some straw on, if we just carry some straw around. I've shrunk the expectation down already because the space for people to work is. Right, now can we have the manure from the trailer there, please? There, oh great, okay. So that's brown. Now we're going to use green. You can either keep the manure solid, or Julian's made up a slurry here. so you can make it wet. So you can actually make manure go quite a long way further. If you've only got 1 or 2 cow pats, just wash it out in water. Yeah.
John Presley is also, you'll hear him calling out a couple of times. So, unfortunately, he's.
That was real life? Yeah. Broadcast? Okay.
Yeah, you can buy it in bags. And actually, after your produce store, if you're anywhere around here and want to get a serious quantity, take your trailer up to Quarry Creek and buy kind of about $2.
It's Rod Windrum of Cripplewood Winery.
You want to go?
Right, more straw, please.
Yeah.
This is a bit rushed, but it is the principle that you'll do. We could fill up the whole of that bay with all of this stuff, okay? But we're not going to get there and get everything else done. So you've seen how we've layered things, yeah? Some of this is still a bit dry, yeah? So again, try and get it so it's all at the same moisture content that it was when it's growing. That's your ideal, yeah? And then you've got the moisture content right. If you start hosing it now, I'll get wet feet and the water will just run over most of that. Some of it will stay, but it's always better to have it, yeah, you say, like this when you're making it up, okay? Then you won't have any problems. So you make a heap, and the top layer should be ideally a thatching layer like straw or this hay. Don't use any. Some people put underfloor carpet stuff. You know, that looks good, but it's full of underlay. It's full of toxic stuff. Yeah. So just try and steer clear of anything toxic. Just some straw or hay just to keep it warm. A biodynamic compost heap, we usually turn them once in its life after about 6 or 8 weeks, and everything on the outside becomes the base that becomes the inside. The heat in the centre will sterilise any seeds. So by bringing what's on the outside onto the inside, anything that still needs to be sterilised gets sterilised in the second iteration, so to speak. So we've done the heap. Now this is about adding the compost preparations. So we're only going to use a little bit. That's the yarrow preparation. And what I do is I get a bit of old compost and just make a little bit of a hole in it and put it in there. So I've got something that is about the size of a golf ball that I can actually handle. It'll hold the preparation in it. You can use clay or whatever you like just to hold something. So can I ask you to hold that one? That's the yarrow one. So that's the yarrow. The chamomile, the same thing. Preparation goes in there. Thank you. The nettle. We're only using very small quantities. Thank you. Then the oak bark. Just a very little bit. A gram of each that I'm aiming at. Thank you. And then the dandelion. Right, so we make them into these golf ball type size, and then we just insert them into the heap. Yeah.
I'll have a different one.
Yeah, so just yeah, just bury it in there somewhere. Yeah. Right. Now there's one that we haven't done yet. Okay. I didn't pass it around this morning. I apologize. That's the valerian. It's just a tincture of the flower of the valerian plant. Okay. And we need a bucket. Okay. Okay, so we have this little bottle of valerian, and we just put in a bit of water. And then we stir it for, some people stir it for 20 minutes, some people stir it for 2 minutes. And actually, maybe we can do the stirring at the same time. So if people like to have a look, there are people who are stirring. If you stir till you get a vortex to the bottom of the bucket, and then you reverse it.
Can you just ask if it matters that it's in plastic?
All I can say is just use it. And the more you stir it, or up to an hour, good. After our workshops in the West just recently, I got an email from a guy who said, I was only going to do it for 10 minutes, but I got so mesmerized, it was 46 minutes before I stopped. Yeah. He said, I didn't do an hour, but he said it was amazing. The water changes texture. And he said the outcome was fantastic. Yeah. So he didn't do the hour, but he did the 46 minutes. Yeah. So this is the valerian one. So we've put the yarrow in, we've put the chamomile in, we've put the nettle in, we put the oak bark in, and we put the dandelion in, and now this is the valerian. Sorry? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And then we sort of flick it around. And I always like to say, or think this is what the Pope used to do when he knew what he was doing. Yeah. But
find the valerian attract worms. It's really terrific. It'll, the worms will come where you put valerian out. What the prostatics give, not polyhydroxystatic. And one of the other things about worms is not usually recognised the fact that they live for 8 years. So, if you want to, you can give them all names. They're really worth having.
there's a girl in her year 11 project at the Steiner School in Mount Barker in South Australia did just that. She had 12 heaps, 4 sets of 3. Half got turned and half didn't. Yeah, and then half of each of those halves, in other words, got preparations and the others didn't. Yeah, and what she found was the ones with the preparations, the temperatures of all of them went up to 65 or whatever it was. They settled back to about blood temperature, about 37 degrees. And then the ones without the preparations in, the inner temperature went up and down with ambient temperature. And the ones with the preparations, the inner temperature maintained more or less blood temperature regardless of ambient temperature. And the ones with the preparations break down faster. Yeah. There's a guy in West Australia where we went, he has chicken offal from a chicken abattoir. And by adding the preparations, he reckons not only the smell reduced, but the turnover is 20% faster. Yeah. So you get a faster, a more complete, and any living organism has a capacity to self-regulate. So then once the preparations have these, what I call organs that organize the breakdown, it has this capacity to self-regulate its temperature. Yeah. But it's, the feedback is more complete breakdown and a faster breakdown. Yeah.
So Hamish was adding preparations in the compost pile, which really distinguish biodynamics because these preparations are relating to the whole of the cosmic energy. And here he'll just explain a little bit about why they use each one. as you can see while we're waiting, each of those 6 preparations relate to what we call NPK fertilisers.
The next round is what we call the compost preparations. And compost, as you've heard, I'm not going to go into the benefits of compost. I agree with all of that. I would say it all if I had time. What we bring in is what we call some compost preparations. These ones are based on sort of herbal extracts. I'm just going to present them in the context of NPK because that's the language you guys speak. We don't actually add these as substances. In other words, the yarrow preparation particularly stimulates potassium, but also sulfur, silica, and selenium. We're using 1 gram per 6 cubic meters of compost. Yeah, so we're not using quantities, but we're actually bringing a certain ordering into the composting process.
And you also heard him saying that you just need a tiny little bit. And if you want to have more rock phosphate or calcium or something, put it into your compost heap. And these 6 preparations actually increase the effect of all of those additional minerals that they put in the compost heap. So you can choose what you know your farm is needing, and it gets totally magnified when it's in the compost process.
Well, farmers have found that to be true. They have reduced the amounts of product that they put in out there. Hamish mentions 1 in 20. They've reduced to far less than that. So they put far less product in there and still getting very good results.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go on. We're going to see him now make up the cowpat pit, which is, if you don't have cow horns, you can put your compost and your cow manures and your preparations into the cowpat pit. And then we're going to see, instead of the hand mixing, we're going to see the mechanical one.
Yeah.
So that's cow manure mixed.
Great stuff.
The eggshell dust.
Sorry?
The eggshell dust.
Just ground up eggshells, that's all this, yeah. It's a living form of calcium, yeah. So that's it.
And this is timber around the side, it's not brick.
It's timber, you can use brick, whatever works. Yeah, if there's white ants or whatever, you'll need to use brick or whatever. The size is basically we put a Hessian sack on it. So it's the size of a Hessian sack. Everything in biodynamics tends to come back to practicalities like the size of the Hessian sack or the bucket or whatever, yeah? So that's the practicality of it.
I'm very pleased Hamish has become politically correct now. He used to say, if you put an old bag on top of it, he doesn't say that any longer.
You get preparations, they come in sort of little plastic bags like this.
So he's now going to show.
So with this one, it's actually just easier. Just make a hole.
He's adding the 6. We'll only see him add a couple of the preparations into that manure. Hamish is using the cow horn.
So that's the yarrow one going in.
No, do the same with it. Just the stirring, you can use a stick. The idea is to get a vortex. As deep as you can. Yeah. So, yeah, if everyone can have a go, because this is the most important thing of the whole day. Because when you get home, you'll have some of this, and either tonight or tomorrow, I hope you'll get to stir it and put it out in the garden. Yeah. So if everyone likes to have a go and then take a sample. Out of the lamp. Yeah. Okay, so would people like to just have a go? There's buckets and sticks.
So that little, you really don't need.
You don't need, you only, I say a drop per square foot. Yeah, you're just getting out. You don't have to. It doesn't matter if there's a gap between or whether you overlap. Yeah, it's not chemical in that sense. So
One of those packets per bucket, is it?
no, in a bucket like that, you know, just a small, well, half a packet will do a bucket. Yeah. So yeah, please just have a go.
You know, over an hectare in those buckets. In the bag, in the bag, yeah.
In the bag, about an acre in the bag.
About an acre in the bag.
About an acre in the bag, yeah.
With
Right.
the 500, about as much as you can sort of, about the size of a golf ball in your hand per acre.
Yeah.
And does that work for flowers and food?
Yeah. Take one. Take home. Yeah.
You can choose.
Yeah.
Right.
The design is, again, when I was at school, we were taught, or conventional wisdom was the function of the heart is to pump the blood. They now know that the blood pulses in the embryo before there's a heart. So it's actually the blood that creates the heart. And its task is to rejuvenate the blood, you know, to stimulate the blood, not to pump it. They now can take people's hearts out and the whole body will pulse for 4 minutes before the body dies. Yeah. So it's not the heart pumping the blood, it's the other way around, more or less. Yeah. So that's what this is. So you've got this rhythmic pulsing. It does a lemniscate through these bowls and then spirals out through the bottom down into the next bowl. Yeah. So it's actually the concept behind it is the heart activity rejuvenating the blood. And the point of the stirring is we're trying to connect this activity to the far end of the cosmos, so to speak. And where anything comes to Earth in a life form, it comes via a spiral. Yeah, you'll find all plants have a spiral form connected to them. The umbilical cord in the human being is spiral. Yeah, wherever life comes to planet Earth, it comes via a spiral. So this spiral that we create in the water is actually connecting this activity to that activity out there, yeah, and try to draw that energy into this enterprise. Yeah. And again, there's more science will be able to describe these things with increasing clarity and less sort of waffle, so to speak, as we move forward.
So we had an earlier webinar and someone asked about Hamish using plastic buckets. And he said, well, originally in the biodynamic prep composting, you know, they said gold was the best. Well, that's pretty hard to get. Then silver, and went to stainless steel when Hamish started. But he said, so many people are making these composts overseas and they were just using plastic buckets. And when they looked at the result, it really wasn't any different. So
no, was marginally different, but it
Yeah.
was still very good, outstandingly
Yeah,
good.
he said the important thing is in the stirring and bringing that energy in from the cosmos. So basically, it's that whole concept of energy, which is different from really other composts, isn't it, Hugo, when you're bringing in that through this movement?
Yes, that we did have an event where we had invited our Farming Circuits members, and they all brought either some compost or some liquids they made, like various compost liquids they made, and that we and we had Dr. Mary Cole there, and she looked at these samples, and the strange thing was that they were all pretty ordinary. Some of them got to the point of being okay. Then I thought I'll have a check at the one I bought, and it was a sample of Hamish's, I think it must have been BD 500. It's the same thing he's handed out in the video. So I got that, and it was about a year and a half old, and put it under the microscope. And it was quite extraordinary. The amount of life it had in that sample showed that that was so far superior to all the other samples we're looking at.
Yeah, she said she'd never seen anything like it, actually. So it was a real testament to the quality of the BD. And Hamish does provide all those things for you if you want to follow this through. So did you want to say something else, Hugo?
I could say quite a bit.
Because we're coming to the end of this presentation.
Well, biodynamics has got to be treated very seriously. Industry will do everything it possibly can to make sure it doesn't get off the ground, or it has got off the ground completely. But industry is very dishonest. I might as well use that word. And that dishonesty is gone back a long time ago. Just this book here was written by that particular book's a rewrite, but the original book's written in 1893. Now that's a long time ago.
Bread from Stones.
It's called Bread from Stone by Julius Hensel. Julius Hensel, by mistake, ground up rock minerals in his grain that he grinding in the old-fashioned grinding stones and windmills, etc. And what happened was that he couldn't eat it. So he looked at it, he put that around, just for the sake of it, he put it around every second brassica plant he had. The brassica plants were about a metre apart or so. And what he noted that where the brassica plants had this flower and stone mix, where insects grew better and the insects didn't attack it. And so from that point, he started promoting, he was a chemist, he started promoting his meal cum mineral product, because the meal actually would biologically activate the stones or the rock dust. And industry didn't like that. So 150 farmers got together and sued Julius Hensel, took him to court, and the court ruled out that they didn't have a case. Then this sort of thing's been happening ever since. You get Louis Pasteur was taken to be the man who made sure that everything had to be nuked. And at the same time, there was a chap called Michel, pronounced Michael Beauchamp, who said, no, we've got to have everything there. We've got to have the pathogens. And so this sort of rot has just been going on. And when the farmers got together, who their crops are failing, and their crops were just failing in Europe. When I say failing, the quality was reduced. They couldn't keep their grains. The grains wouldn't. So that where for years they'd keep the same grain. So they went to Steiner, and Steiner, who he wasn't an agriculturalist, but he certainly looked at Goethe's work, and he just worked it out that it's the cosmic influence on plants that has a big difference, and hence biodynamics started. And biodynamics has been sidelined, ridiculed. But the point is this, that the main point is this: industry keeps telling farmers that they've got to produce more, be more efficient. At the same time, their profit margin goes down, and the quality of the food, actually, since 1950, when CSIRO has done studies on it, they found that the quality of food is dramatically reduced. And the other thing too is that more people are waking up, or I shouldn't say waking up, more people are concerned. And the fact that the gut biome has been sort of promoted, what people are looking for is more complex foods or better foods, and they certainly don't want foods with toxins in them. And the same thing goes with sheep, that when sheep are on biodynamic pastures, their wool's better, and it just goes on. Another interesting study that we read many times, long time ago, it's probably 20 years ago, maybe longer, when we was selling natural fertilizers, was there's a study on this one. Computers were pretty primitive. There's a multi-page printout we managed to print out that there was a study on biodynamic products being used on vineyards. Just about every vineyard area, there's 6 or 8 or more vineyard areas mentioned right across Australia, from northern New South Wales right to Western Australia. And they all were using some biodynamic products, or some of them were actually biodynamic. And what they reported was their wine quality has improved. The vignerons, the winemakers, liked the fact that the product was used, and the vine health also improved. And I think the main thing is that from the producer side, from the farmer side, the producer side, by using biodynamics, you'll get your costs down, you'll get a far better product that's more nutritious, and from the consumer point of view, you'll have a far better connection. And so the consumers want that sort of product, and it's a benefit for the farmers to produce it.
All right, well, I'm going to share the screen again now, Hugo, and we'll have a look at Hamish's website. And Hamish does workshops now with Charlie Arnott. When we were filming, he was working with John Priestley, who was an absolute gem of a man, and he was the one calling out about the worms, and Hamish talking about putting an old bag on his thing. But we've now got Charlie Arnott, who's working with Hamish Mackay, and he's so passionate about, he's got a big farm, and they hold a lot of workshops. And on Hamish's website here, this one here, you can find out Biodynamics 2024 about the workshops that are coming up. I think they've got one a month. There's one on Charlie's Farm next month. There's one on Gem Tree Wines in June in South Australia. So they're doing a great job for getting interest into this whole area of very, very natural farming system when it turns out. Also on this site, you'll find that Hamish can provide preparations, and I guess he is selling the BD 500, but just Google on your computer for suppliers. They're all around the world, and there are little groups everywhere in Facebook, online, and you'll have a field day doing your research when you go onto Mr. Google. Do you want to say anything else, Hugo?
Well, our groups, there's one here at King Lake, and I guess it's still going. Another one at Powelltown, quite a major one. And in the Atherton Tablelands is another a group. So there's groups everywhere. Once you start getting interested, you'll find that it's pretty easy to get the product, or you can make it yourself, or it's probably cheaper and easier to just buy it in or join the group.
Hugo mentioned Powelltown. Alex Podolinsky had a farm there, and his son now runs the Powelltown Biodynamic outlet. And when our children they went to a Steiner school, they were taken up to that farm and shown the cow horns, which we haven't talked about today because we showed you the cow pat pit, but the cow horns are filled with manure and with those preparations as well, and buried in the ground for a couple of seasons, isn't it? Before
No, just over winter, I think.
Well, that's, oh, well, I mean, yeah, 4 to 6 months. But anyway, we're very privileged to get involved with this whole movement of biodynamics nearly 40 years ago. So we're in admiration of how simple it is, and it is scientific when you start to look at why things are working, but no one can really unravel the wonders of nature, really. All right, so that's it for us today. We're going to take you, of course, as we often do, we have an offer for you. So we'll show you what that is coming up. So we have the whole DVD. You saw little extracts of it. You had 12 minutes of that today. It goes to 67 minutes. And then it's followed up by Hugo questioning Hamish Mackay. So there's another 70 minutes of Hamish explaining more behind the whole philosophy of how to make biodynamic compost. And you get access to this digital version on how to make biodynamic compost. It normally is $47. We have shaved off $20, so it's now only $27 today. And that link is here, how to make biodynamic compost. So we are going back to coming up now on our Soil Learning Centre. So it is here. So many think it's the ultimate method of composting, and starting with conventional farm source materials plus the addition of biodynamic preps, which you saw, and minerals, it usually only requires shunning once. So it's covered and left to do its thing while the heat and the fermentation process, along with the worms, cleans up the materials, producing compost rich in a broad spectrum of microbes and plant available minerals. So here's a list of what you will learn: how to build a compost in static piles and cowpat pits, then how to prepare the sprays and broadcast them. And there's a bit about the planting calendar in here, which we hadn't discussed, but you've probably heard of moon planting or lunar calendars. They go back for hundreds of years, where people have observed the different growths with the different movement of the moon, like you see the waves in the sea, they ebb and go in and out. Well, the moon has a magnetic pull almost on water in Earth. And so there's certain times when you plant plants that have got roots, and then other times when you want the leaf, like silver beet and things, you then plant them at the full moon. So there's little videos here, and so if you want to buy it, you can buy it. That is at the Soil Learning Centre under products, how to make biodynamic compost. So we will go back to the webinar. There's another offer. We thought seeing this is also a very important part of biodynamic farming. So you have a digital download. Another interview, Hugo asked Hamish and John Priest at this time, and there's some delightful little stories in that. lifetime access, and it's called the Sun, Moon and Planets. And if we go and have a look at that, it does take a little bit of time to get there, so bear with us. And while we're doing that, that's the cover of the DVD. So it's looking at using a planting calendar to optimise production, and it's part of this one-day workshop. And it's, you know, vignerons used to turn their barrels and things like that, but a lot of people say, oh yes, my family used to, at the full moon, make sure they planted within a couple of days if they were going to put in leafy vegetables. It's very familiar with a lot of people. So you get, when you go to the site, there are little clips telling you a bit more. So you can see exactly what you are getting. And this peppering we didn't talk about at all, but that is actually getting a concentrate of whatever you want to get rid of. Say you want to get rid of, well, we want to get rid of ivy here, for instance. You burn it, you get the ash, you then mix it up and you put it out. And that's called peppering, and it does work. We've used it for a lot of things here. John tells a wonderful story about worming by the full moon. We've had a full moon a couple of weeks ago here, and he was talking about having pumpkin seeds or apple cider vinegar. So if you want to worm your animals, you worm them around the full moon, and you can use your apple cider vinegar. And, you know, it works. And this is an example of the different growth of plants if they're planted at the right time or the wrong time. So this one is also $27, and it's also over the Soil Learning Centre product, Hamish Mackay, John Priestley, Sun, Moon and Planets. When you get the replay, you'll be able to click that there. So back to the site, and then we have an extra special offer. If you buy both of them, there's an extra $7 discount. So there's a link in the replay, you can click on this and you'll find that it'll take you to the featured courses in the Soil Learning Centre, and you just go to product, category, featured course sources, and they're both here, and you can click on 1, 2, or when you get the 2, it automatically comes up with the $7 discount. So there we are. So I'll go back to the PowerPoint slide. Now, if you're a member on this webinar, we also have a note to the Farming Secrets members that all this material you've seen today, plus a separate things talking to Rod Windram about his farm, a separate introduction into biodynamic farming. These are all available to you as members free, because you are a very much appreciated loyal member. So if you go into the site, if you click those links, it'll be on the webinar. You'll see pro access only, but you can actually log in and it will take you in to this product, which you can start watching. So that's about it for today. We really hope you've enjoyed it. And I really do think it is worthwhile checking out the biodynamic movement and find out as much as you can. It's a very, very enjoyable and exciting way to farm. And you can feel it. You can feel on these farms the energy, which sometimes you go onto and you can just feel there's not very much life in the soil. But with a biodynamic farm, you actually can feel the whole life of the farm. And that's what the plants respond to, the animals respond to. You saw those dogs jumping around in the video. That's the sort of feeling you have when you're on these farms.
Yeah, the farmers like their farms, and the families, in most cases, the family wants to stay on the farm too, instead of getting off the farm.
Yeah, that's right. And in that video too that we showed, Rod Windram told us the next day that he has some pigs and he keeps them in a little pen and he puts all the straw and stuff in there. So instead of him putting it in a compost pile, he puts some food in, he puts the straw in and the hay, and the pigs trample all over it. By the time it's finished, it's actually ready to be stirred and...
No, it's ready to be put on the compost pile because it's already been wet and conditioned and manure on it. So it's a shortcut method.
Yeah. And even if you don't have animals, you can go and get a couple of cow pats from someone. As Hamish said, you don't need a lot if you make it into a liquid.
Main thing is to start.
Yep, start. I just love it. And we're really thankful for all the people who joined the webinar. And yeah, we'll see you on the next webinar we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about compost is that CSIRO said, this is going back when we first started selling natural fertilizers, said that in a compost, the definition of a compost was a material that naturally was composted where you couldn't identify any of the raw material. Well, that is the case with biodynamic compost. You can't identify any of the raw material. It's all been worked over by microbes, and even earthworms come infiltrate as well. And nowadays, quite often the compost you see, you can identify the raw materials, which wasn't the original definition of compost.
So keep up your good work. We always get excited when we're having a webinar and we have people joining us, and we know there's some people at least out there who are really very, very keen to go down a more natural way of farming. And it's important. It's really important. So thank you. All right. And with that, we will see you on the next webinar, which is going to be about animals choosing their own minerals. It's a wonderful one too. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.